Today we're diving into the story of an island that has been made and remade over and over for thousands of years. This isn't just a simple history of Ireland. It's really the story of how a place gets shaped, first by nature, then by faith, then shattered by conquest, and then finally reclaimed and reshaped all over again by its own people.
So, where do you even start with a story that vast? 35,000 years. It's almost impossible to get your head around. Well, the way to do it is to look at the huge turning points, those moments where the island's landscape, its culture, its very soul was fundamentally transformed. And our first one, it takes us way back to a time before history was even written down.
All right, so we're starting in a time so incredibly deep, it's hard to imagine. A past before writing, where the only real clues about who lived here are what they left behind in stone and bone. For the longest time, everyone thought human history in Ireland started about 10,000 years ago. But then, in 2021, scientists took another look at this one reindeer bone from a cave in County Cork, and it completely changed the game. The cut marks on it pushed the timeline back by more than 20,000 years. It's an amazing reminder that the story is still being uncovered, right now. And that's the huge challenge here. You have these absolutely mind-blowing structures, like Newgrange. This place is older than the pyramids, and it's built with incredible astronomical precision. But the people who built it left no written records. So for archaeologists, it's this giant puzzle. How do you get these mute stones to speak? How do you figure out their secrets? Well, the good news is we're getting way better at listening. For a long time, radiocarbon dating gave us let's call it a fuzzy picture. But new science, like tree ring dating, is like a secret weapon. It lets us count the exact years, which we can then use to correct the radiocarbon dates. It sharpens the focus and shows us the true, jaw-dropping age of these ancient sites. And that brings us to the next great reshaping. This is when people stopped just sort of living on the land and really started to shape it, big time, driven by new ideas, new tools, and powerful new beliefs. So around 4500 BC, farming arrives. And you really can't overstate how big a deal this was. It was a complete revolution. People start clearing these ancient, dense forests, they're planting the first crops, and for the very first time, they're drawing lines on the landscape with stone walls. They're claiming land and changing the entire ecosystem forever. And if you want to see exactly what that looked like, you have to go to the Sade Fields. This isn't just a few old walls. It's a massive, organized grid of farms that goes on for miles, and it's all been perfectly preserved under a peat bog. It's like a window into this complex, sophisticated society that was thriving thousands of years before the Romans even showed up. It's incredible. But this shaping wasn't just about farming and survival. During the Bronze Age, Ireland became a hot spot for gold. You have these amazing artisans taking raw metal out of the ground and turning it into these breathtakingly beautiful objects. These weren't just necklaces. They were serious symbols of power, of religion, and of a culture that truly valued incredible craftsmanship. And then, the story takes a really dark and violent turn. We jump forward to the 17th century, and the island is about to be reshaped again. Not by farmers or artists, but by invasion, war, and the cold, hard logic of conquest. Okay, so here's what happens. After a massive rebellion in 1641, Oliver Cromwell's army lands. Their mission is simple: crush all opposition and seize enough land to pay off the English Parliament's war debts. The tactics were unbelievably brutal: sieges, massacres, a scorched earth policy. It led to a demographic catastrophe. Up to a quarter of the entire population died from war, famine, or disease. But the conquest didn't stop when the fighting did. It continued, but this time on paper. First, they tried something called the Civil Survey, which was basically just gathering up old records, but it wasn't good enough. So they launched the Down Survey, and this was something totally new. This was the first scientific, systematic mapping of an entire country, and it had one single purpose: to measure, value, and divide up the land of the defeated so it could be confiscated. It was, literally, conquest by map. And really, this summary from a historian just nails it. The goal of all this, the sheer devastation of the war, followed by the cold, clinical precision of the survey, was to wipe the slate clean, to erase the old Ireland, the people who owned it, its laws, its culture, and to make space for something completely different. Okay, let's fast forward, way forward, almost 300 years. After a long and bitter struggle, a new Irish state is finally born in 1922. and it immediately kicks off its own massive reshaping project. This time, it's not about the land. It's about shaping the identity, the very soul of the nation. Just look at these numbers from the 1926 census. The new state was almost completely Catholic, over 92%. This religious unity became the bedrock for building the new Ireland. The Catholic Church offered a sense of stability after a horrific civil war, and, most importantly, it gave the new country a cultural identity that was profoundly different from Britain. So the church and the state basically became partners in this huge nation-building project. The shared goal is to create this ideal Ireland, virtuous, Gaelic-speaking, and distinctly Catholic. And this wasn't a fringe idea. It was a philosophy that soaked into every part of society, and it was shared by political leaders from all sides.
And this wasn't just talk, it was written into law. I mean, look at this list. A whole series of acts were passed that made a specific Catholic moral code the official law of the land. Books were banned, movies were censored, and laws on things like contraception and divorce were taken straight from church teaching. This was the reshaping of a nation's soul, by the book.
But of course, nothing stays the same, right? The Ireland that was so carefully forged in the 20th century, it wasn't going to last. Starting in the last few decades of the century, another transformation began, and this one was faster, more disruptive, and maybe more profound than any that had come before.
The numbers here tell a really dramatic story. The power of the institutional church started to fade, and fast. And it wasn't just one thing. It was like a perfect storm of forces. A modernizing economy, the arrival of television beaming the outside world into every living room, and a massive shift in social values, really led by a new generation, especially by women who were challenging that old order.
And this reshaping, it played out in a series of incredibly intense, personal, and often divisive public debates. Think about this journey for a second. The state that banned divorce for decades finally legalized it in 1995, and it passed by less than 1%. Then just 20 years later, Ireland becomes the first country in the world to legalize same-sex marriage by a popular vote. And in 2018, that constitutional ban on abortion, a cornerstone of the old moral order, was repealed by a massive landslide. In just one generation, the Irish people themselves took back the power to shape their own country's laws.
So, from those first hunters 33,000 years ago, to the Neolithic farmers, the Cromwellian mapmakers, the Catholic nation builders, and right up to the modern voters, every single generation has left its mark, reshaping Ireland in its own image. And that leaves us with one last thought. This story isn't over. The process of reshaping is happening right now. The only question is, what will its next shape be?